Hello friends, today I'm playing with a little technique that I use quite often, and I don't know if I've ever really talked about it because I do it kind of intuitively and I'm always trying to catch myself so I can share these things with you. So we're going to paint these little blue flowers, which by the way, this is an analogous color palette. Isn't it very soft and gentle, and your eyes flow. There's no contrast necessarily. There is contrast between light and dark values, but not in colors. So it's very pleasing to the eye with that type of composition. Again, those colors are pretty close to each other, blues and greens. So that's what I went for. And I, again, want to just share how I love using values to really give some depth and interest. So I have got, I can't recommend these Artisto pads enough, you guys. In my, when I hold my workshops here in my studio, this is what I use. And I have tried every paper out there, from CANT to Excel, just everything I've tried. And aside from using like arches or something like that in my studio workshops, which I can't really afford to do right now, this is fabulous. I mean, I even like their cover. Like, isn't that gorgeous? Those are all my colors. So this is 140-pound cold press, which is what I paint on. And it's just got a beautiful texture. Of course, if you use a ton of water, it's going to have a little warping. If you dry your painting with a dryer, something like this, it will flatten out quite a bit. These are about $15 on Amazon. I bought this quite a while ago. Or you can always, they're perforated. So you can gift these away after you paint them. I tend to keep these and I just label these. Like I have one right now labeled Summer 2024. Then later, next summer, I can refer back to this and it's like, oh, what was I painting last year to inspire me? So great texture, 140-pound cold press, a great student paper. I think you get 3 for $22. Note, if you live outside of the US, I know in the UK it's a little bit harder to get. Meeden is amazing. Meeden is just fantastic. The Meeden cold press. And they ship direct if you're out of the US, or you can get it on Amazon. It's just a little bit more, but it's a fabulous paper. I'm using my little daisy palette, Meeden, and I've got my Meeden water dish to wash my brush and rinse it. Really important. I've got my little paper towel here, and today I'm using my MeiLiang paints. Same thing as the Artisto. You guys, I can't afford to paint on arches and Winsor Newton every day. I just paint way too much, and a lot of it is just playing and having fun. So this MeiLiang palette, fabulous for the student. It's under $20. Look at all the colors you get. They're fabulous. They're creamy. They're bright. They're vibrant. I can get some very light transparencies. They're not grainy. Can't say enough about those. And they're a sister company of Paul Rubens, which I love. So that's what I'm using today, along with my brush set that is coming out in September. I know we're all looking forward to it. I can't wait. It will be, I'm being told, a very limited edition. So make sure you just sign up to be notified, so at least you have that choice if you want to get them. I think the first 24 hours they'll do a discounted price, but it is going to be a small release. If there's enough demand for them, they may release them again. I don't know how that works. But I designed the brush. As you know, my favorite brush is the Princeton 6 long round. So I designed this after that. It's very snappy. Look at that. And I love that. It's perfect for beginners because the softer a brush is, the more moisture, the more water and pigment it's going to hold, and harder to control on your paper. So for beginners, I always suggest, start with a snappier, firmer brush. It's synthetic, but it's fabulous, you guys. I would hold this up against a Princeton any day. And I have 5 in my set. I have a short handle here, which I love. It gives me a lot more control and I don't have to worry about banging the end of my brush anywhere. And I don't paint often on an easel, so the short handle is perfect for me. I do tend to hold it about at the crimping. It just gives, again, me a little bit more control. So there you go. The colors I'm going to be using, let's just get my handy dandy. As you know, I'm loving this. You guys help me find this. I use this to swatch out my colors. So I'm mainly going to be using blues and browns. So again, that analogous color palette. So I'm just going to put the swatch right here. Look at that. Handy dandy, right? And sorry, I'm having a hot flash, you guys. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to put my colors there. The colors I'll use, I'm going to stay in that analogous color palette. And I use a lot of times that diary, that color diary that you know I'm loving, because sometimes, especially for a beginner, you don't really know what these colors are going to look like. So if you swatch them out, and I'm telling you, you guys, it's so fun to do. Let me find my, this little thing is really fun. I'm having a ball with it. I'm swatching everything, you guys. That's my MAB Metallic series. There's the Winsor Newton Cotman series. It's got, each page has this little protector sheet. Here's my MeiLiang. Okay, so here's my MeiLiang. So I can look at this and say, I want to stay in these colors. So my swatches, I think I'm going to go with, I'm kind of pushing myself today. I don't use cobalt and ultramarine blue a whole lot. So I'm going to kind of push myself to use those. A little bit out of my comfort zone. 2, 3, 4. So here is, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is that French ultramarine blue, which, look, it's full. I don't even hardly ever use that color, you guys. So I'm going to put that here in my little swatch. Rinse my brush, tap it off, and now I'll go in and just lighten it out because I want to see how light it can get. So I've got all those different values and I want to include those values. That's what's really important here and for me in every painting. So I've got a light value, I've got a dark value. Remembering dark values are really going to come into the front of your painting. Lighter values are going to fade into the back. It's just like in a landscape. You know, mountains in the distance have that gray or brown kind of neutral look. Same thing here. And boy, I tell you, when I see beginners paintings, that is the first giveaway for me is, and we've all been there, but everything is the same value and it can make your paintings look really flat. Like if you look at this, this pops out. These kind of fade into the background. This pops out a little bit more. The lighter leaves fade into the background. So make sure you're using that, you know, the power of values. And I like to put that in my swatches because I can kind of test and say, okay, do I have all the different values? Yes. Okay, good. So let's see, what other color? I think I'm going to use blue for all the flowers. And then I like a mixture of my yellow green with, so that's probably the darkest value right there. Rinse my brush. Now I'm going to pick up the tree green and just kind of mix it together with that. Ooh, isn't that pretty together? I'm not kidding you guys. Like, look how fun that is. I don't know why I get so excited. I love this stuff. Like, look at that. I think that is so pretty. I might even make this a little bit darker because tree green and yellow green are a little bit close. And then let's see, let's add in, the only other two colors I have are for the stamen and, you know, the little yellow goodies here. So let's add in, I think I used my yellow ochre. So I'm just going to put that here. And I use that pretty full strength, but I'm going to go ahead and swatch it out with the lighter values just so I have it. Yellow ochre is pretty intense, you guys, so be kind of careful using that. It can take over a whole painting. And then brown. I used brown for the tiny little stamens in there. So I think I used a dark brown. You can use the Van Dyke brown, burned brown, whichever one you want. That, you know, they're quite small, so. But I would definitely use a darker. Now that is full value, meaning that's probably 80% pigment, 20% water. Now I'm going in with a rinsed, just a damp brush, meaning I tapped it off so it's not full of water. And I'm just gonna go in and pull out some of that paint so I can see that light value. See that transition, dark and light? That's what we want. And I want to just, not for the stamens will probably all be the darker value, but definitely in my flower petals is where I'm going to focus, and my leaves. And I might just add, I really want to stick with the green and a touch of blue in my leaves, kind of like I did here. So I don't even know if I'll add another color here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I was working very wet and wet. So I want to have my colors ready to go. So because with wet and wet, you want to go wet paint into wet paint. And if you have to get more paint in your palette, this paint is going to dry and then you're going to get those blooms because you're going in with a wetter paint than what's on your paper. And what happens is that wetter paint spreads out, the drier paint becomes a wall, and you get the cauliflowers and blooms. So I want to have my paint ready to go, guys. So here is that blue. I've got a little bit of sparkle in there, which is totally fine. So let's get that blue in there. We had an earthquake yesterday, and I could have sworn I just felt an earthquake again. So weird. I was like, anyway. I digress. Okay, so there is the blue. Just going to scrape off my brush. And I'm telling you, you guys, this brush you're going to love. If you like a snappy brush, I like soft brushes if I'm working really wet and wet. But just keep in mind, as a beginner, starting with a soft brush, I feel I've learned over the years, it's much harder to kind of learn that water control. And the good thing about these snappy brushes is you can really get a nice point. A soft brush is going to be a little bit more flexible. A snappy brush, boy, I wish you could see that teeny tiny point I can get. And then with pressure, I can really open up and get the broader strokes with the belly of my brush. So pretty happy with that in these brushes. Okay, let's see, where are we at? I got my blue. Let's make a little bit of green, which is going to get mixed in with some of that emerald green. That's fine. Not real worried about that. And then I might just put some, let's see if you can see that. Yeah, you can. Put some of the tree green, or I think it's actually yellow green, over there. So these paints are ready to go. Let's keep going here. There we go. And then I've got the tree green, yellow green, blue, and I'm not going to make any of this in here because I just need a little bit of both of those. So those are fine. And I'm actually going to let my paint dry before I use the dark browns and the gold. So don't need to have that ready to go. All right, starting with my lightest value, I'm going to go into this paint and just add a little water. And you know what I think I'll do? I'm debating if I should use my filbert brush. Where is it? Well, that answers that question. It's not right here, so I'm not going to use that. We'll just use this brush. I just love the filbert because it's so easy to use, you guys. I'm kind of a lazy painter, and if I can find a brush that literally paints my flower for me, I'm down. Okay, so let's pick up some of our blue. I'm gonna go up in here because it's a little bit less pigmented, and let's just start painting our flower. I like to use the side of my brush. I can get a broader stroke, and it just works well for me. So let's start up here, and I'm just going to make, now I notice I have some water drips on there, so let's just get that. Because paint goes where water goes, so wherever those drips were, it would have filled up with my paint. All right, so using the point, resting my hand on the side of my paper, holding my brush about 2 o'clock, so I can get the wide part of my brush, the finer line you want. Like for the stamens, I'm gonna hold my brush upright and just integrate the very tip of my brush. So here I want a little wider stroke. So here we go. Pressing down, there we go. And look, that is the perfect light value to start with. And I'm just gonna go in, keep using the side of my brush. Now that got a little bit darker, that's okay. And there we go. So I'm using a combination by letting up on the pressure and getting some of those thinner strokes, and then pressing down more pressure to open the belly of the brush and get those wider strokes. Now before that dries, I want to go in with my green, and I'll just use this green here. I might even add the teeniest bit of olive green's a pretty powerful color too, you guys, as you just saw. Didn't quite want that much in there, but that's okay. Let me water that down a bit, tap off to get any excess water, and let's go in and just create, because I love that blend. There we go. So there's our first little flower. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to create some little leaves while this is kind of wet. Oops, see, I had too much water. Tap, tap, tap. Get that water off. And let's just go in and create some leaves here using the tip of my brush. And I'm also, I kind of treat when I pick up water as a color. So I went in and rinsed a lot of that off and went in with just water. Now I want to keep going. I'm kind of talking a lot. So 2 C strokes, point, press, point, and then let's go in and just tap in while that's wet. Now I'm going to even tap in with a tiny bit of that blue because I am using an analogous color palette. And look how fun and pretty that is. And you guys, look at the beautiful blend in here. That's the epitome of what I love watercolors for. It's always different, it's always beautiful. And it's really working with what watercolors has to offer and what watercolors is about. It's about that blend. So I'm using the tip of my brush. I'm just gonna go in and add some of that in. And now I'm gonna let it be because it's starting to dry. So wash, rinse in my wash and rinse water. Let's go into the second flower. We'll come back to this with those darker values once that really dries. But look how beautiful these blends are. Now, if I had too much water on my brush, those would have just turned into a big old puddle. But because my brush was just damp, meaning I washed, I rinsed, tapped off, it's just damp. It's not like a sponge full of water. And that's the easiest way for beginners to learn to paint, I believe. Okay, let's go into our second flower. So I'm dipping into a little bit of that dark value and pulling it up here so I'm getting a lighter value. And let's go into our second flower here. Again, resting my hand. My brush is almost horizontal so I can use the side, the tip, and the belly, getting a wider brush stroke. And let's just go in and create another flower here. So pressing down, opening the belly. And let's keep going here. And then I'm bringing the point of all those petals to the center of my flower. So just tapping into a tiny bit of that. There we go. And you can even add more water to that. And let's just keep going. There we go. Okay, now before that dries, I'm going to go into my green, grabbing just a tiny bit of what's in the puddle there, drawing it out so it's lighter, and I'm going to go in and add while this is wet, because I want that beautiful blend with a damp brush, not full of water and liquid. And let's just bring that around, light pressure with the tip of my brush, and now I'll go in and create maybe, let's just do a little bud here. So back into my blue, pulling out a little bit. My palette here is kind of on an angle, each little well. So if this was a flat well, just pull it over to the side and add more water. So you've got your darkest value down in there, or to one side, and a little bit lighter value on the other side. And I'm just gonna add a little tiny, just a little bud here. Maybe use the side of my brush, and that's it. I will go in there with some green and let that spread. So beautiful, you guys. Let's do a few leaves, point press, come around. And I want to touch into my petal so that I get that beautiful blend. And here, and now before all this dries, just pick up a tiny bit on the tip and let's put that in there. Isn't that pretty and fun? Look at that beautiful color blend. So damp brush, you guys, again, I'm repeating this because it's so important so that you don't just get this pool of liquid, just damp. And let's see, I think that's good. This is probably, it's pretty warm here, so this is somewhat dry. Here's key. This is where I'm gonna go in and add in, I'm picking up that darker value now, but still tap, tap, tap. I don't want too much paint on there. If it needs to be darker, I can always make it darker. And let's just go in, and I'm gonna add some petals here to pop out in front. So there we go. Now I'm gonna add kind of a front petal flipped up. Like that. And maybe one coming up right here. And there we go. Let's move to our second flower here. And I'm gonna do a little petal, point, press, make it a little bit thicker, and then up to a point again. Now, doesn't that look like a petal coming out right in front? And then maybe using the side of my brush, something like that. And I can go in, I don't want to soften that one, but I can go in and just add some water there. Kind of coming in here. So those front bright blue petals are really popping out in front, and now you immediately created this step. I'm gonna go into this one and just with a dry, thirsty brush, just pick up a little of that. And there you go. Let's make a couple, tap, tap, tap. See all that water that came off? Really important. Ah! Well, there you go. Happy accidents, as Bob Ross would say, right? I'm gonna go in here and add just a little bit in front. Well, now I need to kind of fix that. Not sure how I'm gonna fix that one, you guys. And there you go. Now what's gonna really help here is we're gonna go in and do those little stamens. So I'm gonna pick up some of my Van Dyke brown, and let's go in and create these little things coming out of, now I haven't got enough water on there, so I'll put a little bit more on there. And just using the tip of that brush, coming out from the center, just kind of a little flick. if you get your brush a little bit wet, but tapping off the extra water, you can get some nice little thin lines like that. Now I will go in, let's add some of that yellow ochre, but not too much. So I want to get it on my brush, tap, 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 and I'm going to hold my brush upright. Look at that. See how it created that depth? And honestly, that's one of the biggest things I can tell with beginners is they don't get that depth. And then I think what I want to do is I want to go in with a little water and go over a few of these little leaves. So point press, there we go, point press, add in some of that green, just like that. And maybe here. So I'm just glazing over with some darker hues. Pick up a little bit of that green, making sure I don't have too much water, so tap, tap, tap. And point press. And there you go. And then I'll go in with just the tiniest bit of blue, just to make it interesting. Brown is also a beautiful color to add into your leaves. And there you go. So I hope that helped give you a little bit of how, you know, values can make such a difference on your painting. So I've got this value and I've got that value, and actually even lighter. And coming back to your flowers and creating some of those moon shape petals in the front really creates some interest there. So same thing with here, and then going back in, and I create these little doodads, little stamens like that. And I hope you give this a try. And if you want, I will find my, a couple of you have asked me for this. I'll find, these are so cool. They feel really cool too. They're little rubber, and then you guys actually led me to the block. These are great. I'm totally having so much fun with these. And for every painting now, I can write down what my colors were. So it's a really great reference to come back to summer 2024 Artisto pad, like a little journal. I put these all in a cupboard and I can refer back to them, and I can even see my colors listed here now. So I might fill this with maybe one more color because I did use a little bit of olive green. So I might make that olive green. And I think that's it. Keep in mind too, if you are enjoying this, make sure you subscribe, because I hear people say like they're not seeing my videos, and come to find out they just didn't subscribe. So if you do want to see more of them, just make sure you subscribe, or at least come back to my homepage and check. And I also have a brand new watercolor course, you guys. I made it because I really, if any of you, I'm trying to get all of you guys. So if you are doing great with just these little freebie tutorials, awesome. If you want to go a little bit deeper and understand a little bit more what I'm doing, a little bit more comprehensive, a little bit more structured, I have a brand new class. It's perfect for beginners. And I think at the end of it, you'll be able to sit down and go, I know how to do that. I know how to make those brush strokes. So if you're struggling a little bit with brush strokes and you like a little bit more comprehensive materials, you do get worksheets, you might like my beginners class, and it's right there. Just click on that. All right, thank you so much for being here with me in this little community. I'm trying to listen to what you guys want and how you learn best and offer a variety.